Hello everyone, in this week's video, I'm going to try to overcome art block. So I sat down to work on this week's video and I just felt kind of off. I had an idea for a video, but when I tried to work on it, things just weren't going smoothly. I was overthinking things and just really getting stuck in my head. I felt like I couldn't move forward, so I started to try to think of a different video idea that seemed feasible in my current state. That's when I remembered that I had this. This is Create This Book 3 by Moriah Elizabeth. If you don't know, Moriah is an amazing YouTuber that I'm a huge fan of. She makes crafty/art type videos and I really love her work and she's really funny. And this is a book that she created. It's a book filled with prompts that help encourage you to create. I feel like this would be the perfect thing to do to help me get out of my funky mood. Also, I'm going to be making very different art from my usual today. So just in case you don't know, this is what my art usually looks like, but please don't expect any super detailed or finished pictures in this video. I'm going to be trying to keep things simple and fun. To start, you might have noticed that the cover is very simple, and that is because we are supposed to customize it. Inside the book, it recommends art supplies for decorating the cover. At one point in the past, I had tried swatching an alcohol-based marker on the cover, but the result was very streaky. The book mentions that acrylic paint works well, so I thought I'd try paint markers. They go down really nicely, but they are easy to scratch off. I technically could seal them in, but I don't have any kind of sealer on hand. So I decided to try color pencil, and thankfully the ones I have are pigmented enough to be able to apply to the book. So I decided to use these. I didn't totally have a vision for what I wanted the cover of the book to be, but for the art in and on this book, I'm going to try to not think too hard and try to be more spontaneous. Like I said, I kept overthinking things, so I was trying to avoid overthinking. I decided to just start filling in this area with different colors. I wanted to make a gradient that flowed to different pastel colors. The pencil was a bit hard to work with on the cover. I had to press really hard to get the pencil to go down, and the result is a little bit streaky and not super smooth. I maybe could have gotten a smoother result if I had worked slower, but I didn't want to be here all day. The cover doesn't have a ton of tooth to work with, so it is hard to build up the color pencil, and so that also makes it harder to make a smooth transition. After some time, this was the result. Next was the paint palette. My impulse was to make it fade from teal to purple, but I ended up not liking this and I changed it later. I know the acrylic paint marker is easy to scratch off, but I thought it'd be fun to use. I wanted to add some of the same colors I used for the paint splash on the paint palette. And since the paint swatches were filled in black, I had to use the paint marker to do this. And I do really like this added detail. I feel like it's fun. With the added colors, the blue palette just felt wrong, so I tried to go over with yellow to make it a more standard palette color. I also didn't really like this as the colors are muddy now, but we'll come back to this. With another paint marker, I filled in the border area with a light wood brown. I thought adding in a more neutral color would be a nice complement to the rest of the colors I used. Next, to make the inner area feel less empty, I just added little hearts and dots with different colors until the area was filled. I've learned that little hearts can be very easy to draw if you just use two slanted lines in opposite directions. Lastly, to try to fix this muddy mess of a palette, I go over the pencil with the paint marker that I used for the border. The pencil kept wanting to mix with the paint, so this was a bit tricky to cover up, but I eventually got it to work, but I did have to touch up the paint line art with a pen. Lastly, for the back of the book, I just filled in the little paint splotches with colors, and I added the pattern from the front in the paint area. I did the pattern here because I didn't really feel like making a color gradient with pencil again. Plus this keeps the text very easily readable. And now the cover is done. It's simple, but I feel like it fits me. I like the pastel colors and tiny pattern. Okay, now let's go into the book. I start by putting my name right here as the book requests. On the next page, there's a box that the book says I can fill with whatever I want. And I was like, no, don't make me decide. I'm feeling indecisive and art blocky. Just tell me what to do. But after staring at the blank box for a bit, I decided to just draw a little chibi Doris saying hello. If you don't know, Doris is the main character of my webcomic, My Next Door Neighbors, that I post here on YouTube. I chose to draw Doris because out of all my characters, she's the easiest for me to draw because I've drawn her probably hundreds of times. Also, you may notice that I put a book behind the Create This book. This was so I could draw on the left side of the paper. Because of the binding, the left side doesn't lay flat on the table, so I needed to have a solid surface behind it. Thankfully, my journal was just the right width to prop up the page. I've been trying to journal more this year. My goal is to journal every day, but I've fallen behind kind of recently. I need to do a catch-up entry. My new method for journaling is high-low buffalo. So I say what the high point of my day was, what the low point of my day was, and then a random fact or something interesting. I have found this format simple but effective. When I used to journal, I would sometimes not know where to start, or I felt like I would have to go into detail about everything that happened that day. But this method of high-low buffalo helps me have a format that I can follow. So it's made journaling a lot easier. Anyways, I sketched outdoors with pencil and went over my sketch with a brown fine liner. I decided to keep this sketch on the simple side and didn't color it. But I did add a little bit of shading and also added some green to her eyes for a pop of color. I did learn after working on this sketch that the fine liners bleed through the paper a bit, so I think I'm going to avoid using them on future pages. But here's little Doris. Now let's see what's next. On this spread, the book wants me to put a start date and also write down my goals for this book. Also, I didn't see this until way later, but I was supposed to decorate this page with things that made me think of new beginnings. But yeah, maybe I'll come back to these pages in the future. But my goals for this book are to have fun and to not be a perfectionist. I've been worrying too much about making things perfect, so I'm trying to break out of that habit. And now we are really on to the first creative prompt of this book, and this one is create clouds. Look out your window and draw the clouds you see. I took a picture of some of the clouds outside my window, and I'm going to make a piece inspired by them. When I was on vacation, my mother-in-law got me this adorable travel watercolor set, and the paper is just the right size to put into this book. So I put some glue on the back of the paper to make the paper stick, and also a bit of tape to help hold down the edges. I wanted to use watercolor in this book, but the paper is on the thin side, so I thought it'd be better to put in my own watercolor paper. The first composition idea that popped into my head was having a girl standing by the edge of a cliff, and in the distance there are clouds and mountains, and since I'm trying to not overthink, I went with this idea. I'm sketching this with an erasable magenta color pencil. Erasable color pencils are my favorite to sketch with. I prefer them over normal pencils as they don't smear as much and often blend better with different mediums. Graphite has a tendency to make colors kind of muddy if it ends up mixing with the color. But erasable color pencils aren't as erasable as graphite, so there is that bit of a trade-off. With my sketch in place, I can start to add colors. Since I took my picture of the cloud around sunset time, I'm going to use sunset colors for this picture. The sky will start as a muted blue and then fade to a warm light orange. Sunset colors are one of my favorites to work with. I love the warm color scheme and lighting, plus making the gradients of different colors is always really fun. To add depth, I try to make the mountains in the background lighter, and then they get darker as they get closer to us. Something I do slightly dislike about this paper is that it gets this dotted texture in some areas when I add the watercolor. It's not the worst thing ever, but if I was being picky and trying to make a more finished piece, this texture would definitely bother me. But for just simple pictures like this one, I don't mind it. For our clouds, we can often want to just make them be white, but since I have my reference picture to refer to, I can see that the color for the clouds is actually pretty dark, since the side that is facing us is in shadow. To add the shadow, I lay down some color, dry off my brush, and then dab my brush to blend the paint around. Because I dry off my brush, I'm able to blend out the paint, and it also gets a kind of softer texture from the brush. Lastly, to make the clouds pop, I go in with some paint markers around the edges. I used a white first, and then to make the highlights warmer, I use a light yellow. And so here are my finished clouds. I always love getting to work with watercolor. It always feels so loose and freeing. And I love mixing all the colors. For this next page, I need to create bewilderment. Draw something completely ridiculous and pointless on this page. I feel like there are so many ways I could interpret this, but I decided to keep things random and spontaneous by drawing a random shape with my eyes closed. I ended up with this, and what I see in this is a chef slime. Now, to explain a bit, I've been playing a lot of Moonstone Island in my free time, and in Moonstone Island there is a mystical slime and a cool slime. These are actually references to Terraria, and well, I have the mystical slime on my team and I think she's adorable. So because I've been playing so much Moonstone Island, when I saw this shape, I saw a slime wearing a chef hat, and this does seem to fit in with the bewilderment prompt, I think. It does seem a bit ridiculous. I loved adding all the different colors. I wanted the slime to look very fun, vibrant, and kind of magical. I felt like the chef needed some food next to him, so I added a kind of wonky cake. I guess this kind of makes him a baker slime, but let's not get caught up in the details. I mean, I'm drawing a slime with a big fluffy mustache. I don't have to take it too seriously. But I did really love drawing the fluffy mustache. I think he turned out cute and I really like it. On the next page, the prompt was to create stained glass using only straight lines to make a design. When I think of stained glass, I think of old buildings or castles, and recently when I think of castles, I think of my original character Silva. So the first idea I got was to draw a stained glass window with a gardenia design. Silva grows gardenia flowers, so that's why I chose them for the design. To help aid with my drawing, I did look up references of stained glass flowers as well as actual flowers. My parents always really liked stained glass windows, so we often had them in our homes. I always feel kind of nostalgic towards them. Since I would often stare at the stained glass a lot as a kid, I always thought the colors were really pretty. And a lot of times they would make rainbows and I really liked looking at the rainbows. For drawing the lines of the window, I'm going to use a paint pen. The one I was using before had a brush nib, but this one has a chisel nib. I chose this one because I thought the chisel nib would be easier to work with when it came to making consistent lines that aren't too thick. I actually want to try to make a more complicated window design that will be in Silva's castle. Oh, if you don't know, Silva is a princess and she's a character from a fantasy story that I'm working on, and I want to design a royal crest that will be used throughout the castle and possibly in the stained glass window. But I haven't gotten around to doing that. Oh, so for the colors, I tried to use a variety of darker and lighter colors to provide interest, but also make that kind of signature stained glass look. Something I've always wanted to try is making faux stained glass. I've seen people do it, and I always think it looks really neat. I kind of just have to get the supplies for it. Oh, and I do apologize that for this video, I have to kind of skip around in the footage a lot, and I don't get to show you the process in major detail, but I had so much fun filming this video that I finished a good number of pages, so I have to go through them kind of fast, or else this video will get way too long. But here's my stained glass design. It's not perfect and the lines are kind of wonky, but I did have fun making it. For the next page, I forgot to show the prompt in the footage, but it was to create resistance. Draw something heavy on top of something light. And to be honest, I kind of just wanted to skip this prompt because nothing interesting was popping into my head. I just kept thinking of a bowling ball on a pillow. However, after sitting and contemplating a bit more, I came up with the idea of a small character trying to lift a larger character. So my original characters that have the most significant height difference are Silva and her knight Chip. So I decided to make them be the stars of this piece. For the poses, I did have to find a reference to work off of since they are kind of complicated. I found this one on Pinterest and it was super helpful. To help me not get confused, I sketched Silva with a more bluey green and Chip with a more yellowy green. Things start to get very intertwined by the legs, so I wanted to make sure to keep straight what belonged to who. So like I mentioned, I'm a big fan of Moriah and her videos. I started watching them, wait, let me check. 6 years ago? Man, it's crazy that's been that long. I feel like I just started watching her stuff like a couple years ago. I love all of her videos, and I've been really enjoying her current Blob Universe series. It's so fun to see characters turned into blobs, but also new blob designs. I love a lot of her characters, but some of my favorites are Galacticat, Winnie and Wilfred, Cupie, Darla, and of course Pickle, Georgie, and Derp. They're all so cute. Her videos often make me want to work with clay or 3D forms, or do more crafty stuff. Maybe in December I should do another clay Christmas ornament video. I haven't done one of those in a long while. Also, when I watch her videos, they always make me want to up my editing game, but also try to be more funny or like make jokes. But like, I'm not very naturally funny, I feel like. So yeah, long story short, her content inspires me a lot and I really like to watch it. So back to the art. As you can see, I broke out a fine liner again, and I said I wasn't going to do that because they bleed through the paper. And while I decided that for this book, for the most part, I'm not going to do art on the back side of the pages, I feel like that will just make things a lot simpler and easier for myself and allow me to use more mediums. Also, the drawing is kind of wonky and things are off with the anatomy, but like I've been saying, I'm trying to not put pressure on myself and just have fun. And I had a lot of fun with this one. Silva's face amuses me so much. I love drawing her and Chip together. It's funny because Silva is a princess and in my head she's always pretty stoic, but for some reason in my dumb doodles of her, she's always radiating angry gremlin energy, and I don't know what to do about it. Oh, and I just noticed I never explained why Silva is trying to lift Chip. Well, my idea is that Chip injured his foot somehow and is having a hard time walking. Silva, being the person that she is, wants to help him because he's in pain, but Chip is kind of resisting the help because he knows he's way too heavy for Silva to lift, but she's trying her best to help. So there are kind of two forms of resistance with this picture. The resistance of Silva trying to lift Chip, who is much heavier than her, but Chip is also resisting Silva's help a little bit. And so here's my silly drawing of resistance. I think this one is my favorite out of all the pages I did. Okay, so I felt like I had time for one more page, and for this one, I need to make an I Spy page, hide different items in a chaotic scene, include an I Spy search. At first, I wasn't sure what to draw for a chaotic scene, but then I thought it might be fun to just draw a bunch of stuff that I have in my office. Now, I could have probably gotten a better result if I had sketched out the items first and then did the line art, but I was starting to run short on time, and this prompt was kind of tedious, so I just went straight in with pen. The first item is a stuffed penguin holding a donut that is wearing a bunny costume. My husband got me 2 of these as a Christmas gift. One is wearing a bunny costume and one is wearing a frog costume, and they are really cute. Next is Mimikyu. He is also a plushie that I have. I love Mimikyu. He's one of my favorite Pokemon. Third is another plush known as Rodri. He is a very huge squishmallow that was also a gift from my husband. I do apologize to Rodri. I drew his face looking extra derpy. Now we have a turtle that I call Tortimer. He is a pot that holds a fake plant. I've had him for years and he's always just kind of been around my workspace. I wasn't sure what to put in this space, so I just added in some pink pens that were on my desk. Something else that was on my desk was my water bottle. I gotta make sure to stay hydrated. I really like this water bottle. It kind of just looks like a standard bottle, but the top part screws off so it's easy to add ice if I want. Plus the color is really cute. Oh, and I also added some pencils. On my desk I have a Pusheen pencil holder and it's shaped like a milk carton. It's super cute. I got it from the Pusheen box. And you get such cute items in the Pusheen box, but I don't get it anymore because I don't need to fill the house with more Pusheen stuff. I have a Korok pin on my cork board, so I added a Korok. This is an Arby's red ball. It's actually a bath toy, but I kind of use it as a stress ball and kind of a fidget toy. Next is a Winnie the Pooh Tsum Tsum. I've had this thing for years, and I honestly don't remember where I got it from. I feel like someone just bought it for me from the store. And I of course had to include my plushie of Bumble Bear. Bumble Bear is one of Mariah's characters. I got the plushie version of it from the plushie mystery boxes. I've been wanting to buy more, but I'm trying to restrain myself because I have a lot of plushies. This is a Molong pencil topper that is holding a seashell. I love Molong, they're so cute. This is taking a long time, so the last items I drew were my play button, my painting mug, washi tape, a cute pen, and Dachi, my Squishmallow dragon. Okay, now with all of the line art done, I can add some colors. I kind of try to use the same colors if different objects had colors that were similar. Like for yellow objects, I tried to use the same yellow, even if the objects in real life were slightly different yellows. That way things are a bit more cohesive. I feel like the art I made in this video was nothing amazing, and towards the end of filming, I almost started to feel bad and started to put pressure on myself that I should have made a picture that was more finished and clean and pretty. But I kept trying to remind myself of the goals I set at the start of this book, and those were to have fun and to not be a perfectionist. And I feel like the prompts and art I made in this video allowed me to do those things. It can be so easy to get caught up in wanting to please others or to make videos that you think will do well, and it starts to take the fun out of things. But doing this video and trying to shift my focus on doing art just for fun, I think is something that I needed, because having fun is the main reason I make art. So I need to not let my brain take the fun out of things. So here's my finished I Spy page. I made a list of items on the left, and I also added extra little items with color pencil that you are looking for. Feel free to pause and try to find the items if you want to. And of course, here are all the other pages. It was really neat working with the different prompts, and some of them are a challenge or confusing at first, but they do really help push you to create something different and out of your comfort zone. I'll put a link to the book in the description if you want to check it out. I highly recommend it as it's a lot of fun. Before we end, I want to thank my super awesome YouTube members and Patreon patrons for their support. It means so much to me. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!